Watch this.
How could an international trip turn into a domestic debacle? Well, that's what one of Idaho's Democratic lawmakers is dealing with after traveling to Israel. Representative Rubel tells us it wasn't what you think it was, or what you might have been told. It took nearly 40 people, a lot of shovels, and even a few bee hotels to make it happen. We'll show you why a brand new garden in Parma isn't just about pretty plants, but more about protecting our food supply. You ruin everything.
Well, I mean, we're government. We do that.
Oh, it's funny because it's true. You know, most of us know what to do while driving up Bogus Basin Road. Well, that tradition is about to be transformed. Imagine if more than 150 people who are supposed to be on your side suddenly tell you they are extremely disappointed and disgusted with you, and then they demand you remove yourself from representing them. Well, that is what happened to one of the leaders of Idaho's Democratic Party. House Minority Leader Ilana Rubel traveled to Israel last week as part of an official trip as a state legislator. When a picture was posted to social media of Representative Rubel, along with a handful of Republican lawmakers, 157 constituents from various districts called Rubel's participation, quote, an Israeli-funded propaganda trip. Rubel told Joe Paris today that isn't the case at all. In fact, she says she went there to ask the same questions those Idahoans likely would have asked themselves.
You can no longer claim to represent Idaho Democrats or the people of this great state, reads a letter signed by 157 Democrats addressed to Democrat and Minority Leader Representative Ilana Rubel. Reaction after Rubel traveled to Israel last week.
In the conflict in Israel and the Middle East, I think it's something that behooves us all to learn about. It's an incredibly important issue. It's a dispute that's been going for thousands of years. It's not something that I'm expert on at all. But this trip offered an opportunity to meet with the president, the prime minister, the foreign minister, the speaker of parliament, to go to the sites of October 7th and really understand what happened there, to kind of understand the unique geopolitical challenges of the area and to ask hard questions. And I am extremely concerned about the death toll in Gaza.
Rubel and some Republican colleagues from Idaho were invited to participate in an event hosting lawmakers from all 50 states. The letter to Rubel described it as an anti-BDS conference, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, something critics of Israel continue to call for. It is a topic that has come up at the State House.
There was one a couple of years ago saying that the state can't do business with anybody that boycotts Israel. Actually, I voted against that bill because I thought that a boycott is a form of free speech that should be protected. So, ironically, I actually voted against the Israeli side on that one.
Some people are describing this as an Israeli propaganda trip that has been paid by the Israeli government to have American Jews and American lawmakers come to Israel and say everything's great. Did you find that was the type of environment you were in?
No, I mean, I had a lot of conversations, with people who are actually fervent opponents of the Netanyahu regime. There were certainly moments in public presentations where I felt, and I went going in that there was probably going to be more presentation of the Israeli perspective. But, I'm a Democrat in Idaho. I'm pretty used to hearing, people tell me things that I don't necessarily take at face value. I've sat through untold thousands of hours of people talking about why we should end Medicaid and why we should shut down LGBTQ rights and everything. Just because I hear it doesn't mean that I'm now hopelessly brainwashed and propagandized. But we did hear differing viewpoints. And we actually did have an opportunity to go into the West Bank and meet with some folks of Palestinian heritage there. But I was asking a lot of questions, not just of the leaders, but also, we had opportunity to talk to just, 18-year-old IDF soldiers, just regular Israelis. It was only a 4-day trip, so this was not a comprehensive, PhD course in everything happening in the Middle East. But, there was opportunity to really press back on, the party line, if you will.
The letter to Rubel continues with stats and opinions on the war between Israel and Hamas, leading into a takeaway, quote, to say your actions are a betrayal would be an understatement. You have deeply violated our values, not just as Democrats, but as Americans. We are hurt beyond words and have lost all faith in you as a leader. The dissonance between the principles you proclaim and the actions you have taken allow no path forward for the Idaho Democratic Party and paint no alternative to the moralless, dishonest politics of the right. Rubel says she doesn't regret the trip. It was an opportunity to ask top Israeli leaders, including the president, directly about the very concerns highlighted in the letter.
I got up at the state dinner in front of the cameras and 250 legislators and everything and said, hey, you know, you're losing the world's support because of the civilian death toll in Gaza. This is unacceptable. You know, what are you doing? What is your strategy to try to limit this and protect these innocent civilians? I could not have stayed in Idaho and been able to personally tell the president of Israel, you know, that exactly that message. So I'm very glad I went. I learned an incredible amount. I hope that I was able to deliver some important messages that I couldn't have otherwise delivered.
The letter and some social media comments on the topic heavily criticized this picture of Rubel, planting an Idaho flag on Israeli soil. The soil, Rubel says, is a site honoring victims of the October 7th attack on Israel.
We were planting a tree in honor of the massacre victims, and they had 50 flags up for every state so that every state's delegation, because every state had their delegation there, and every state would then know where to go to plant their tree. So the flag was already there. It was not a flag. They were like, oh, this is where we're supposed to plant our tree. So we didn't bring the flag. We didn't plant the flag. The flag was there. It was to indicate where we were supposed to plant our tree.
Rubel adds that given the opportunity, she would go to Gaza and do the same thing to honor innocent killed in the war. The letter goes on to demand Rubel resign as minority leader and basically tells her not to seek office again.
It felt a little bit extreme that, like, okay, so I wanted to go there and tell the top leaders that I'm concerned about the civilian death tolls, and they're angry that I would even talk to them about the civilian death tolls. It seemed like a fairly fine point on which reasonable minds could differ, maybe, but maybe not a reason to try to throw someone under the bus who's been one of your biggest champions on every other issue for 11 years. So it was disappointing. I hope to have a chance to talk to some of those folks, but I don't think it's the direction we need to go in. I don't think we need to be doing more demonization and more stepping back and more refusal to talk to people.
Rubel also has a strong personal and ancestral tie, leading her to go on this fact-finding trip.
I am one of the very, very few Jewish members. I think there's maybe two of us. There are not a lot of Jewish people in Idaho, and I am the descendant of Holocaust refugees, and I never thought that I would see the day that I would be run out of town on a rail, or people trying to go to Israel, and I'd never been to Israel before. It's, and initially I was the only one targeted. I mean, there were 5 people on this trip, and for the better part of a week, all of the wrath was targeted against me, and then finally I think there was an op-ed that, threw in the other 4. I do think we need to hear the Israeli side of this. I think we need to obviously hear the Palestinian side of this, but I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to understand Israel's interests in this as well. As I said, right or wrong, they have beliefs and they have this, and we have to take that into account if we're going to find a solution.
In terms of questions about resigning her position as House Minority Leader or not seeking election again, Brian, Rubel tells me this afternoon she does not plan on resigning as Minority Leader, and she does plan on running again.
Okay, and so what I take from that, and you probably take the same thing, is as it is with social media these days, you don't get the whole story from just a post or a picture that you see on social media. You got to get the whole story by learning more about it, asking those questions, and listening to what people have to say. That's kind of what I took from that.
And it's interesting, if you look at the names on the list of the letter that was signed, you'll notice none of her state house colleagues or Democratic Party leaders signed the letter. It's constituents who have the absolute right to voice their opinions on that. But Rubel told me that when they were searching some of these names, she wants to talk with these people and hear their concerns. They found that a chunk of them are Republicans, registered as Republicans. Some of them don't live in Idaho, and some of them, they couldn't find a record of. That doesn't mean that they haven't registered since and they're not available in the database, but it was disappointing for her from different perspectives.
Okay, yeah, good for her to kind of look into that. Thank you very much, Joe. Well, you probably heard the story of the birds and the bees, right? And the flowers and the trees, as the song goes. Well, in Parma, they're kind of rewriting it. And in this version, it might just change the way Idaho farmers grow their crops, thanks to a new effort from the University of Idaho Extension Office. As Hunter Funk explains, it's all coming together for kind of this, well, I guess a pretty sweet ending?
Yeah, Brian. This is where science is meeting soil, you could say, and a
Okay.
whole lot of pollinators are learning to share the same space. They created this pollinator garden, and it's helping Idaho's agriculture.
The importance of this can't be understated. Here in Idaho, we're over 720 native bee species. So everyone thinks of the honeybee, the alfalfa leaf-cutting bee, maybe a bumblebee. We have way more bee species in Idaho than that. Probably 90% of them are going to be ground nesters. So we need to preserve that habitat and have nectar resources for them to forage on. I would also say that this is an important site because it's tying that concept of agriculture to bees.
A group of nearly 40 people cleared out rocks, brush, and trees to make way for more than 130 pollinator-friendly plants, irrigation, and even bee hotels. According to the U of I, it estimated that more than 1/3 of every bite of food humans consume is thanks to native and managed pollinators. It's why you may see more farmers putting them around their farms.
We, as educators and researchers, play a role in educating people, educating the farmers, with science-based results. But it's really exciting to see how people are thinking about the pollinators and saving the pollinators more.
And coming up at 6, we look at why this garden could be one of the most important things planted in Parma this year, and what it means for the food on your table.
Okay, so it's not uncommon to drive around some of the farms and you see some of those white boxes,
Yep.
those bee boxes that are out there. So you're saying instead of that, they're going toward these gardens that are next to their ranches and farms?
I mean, you could have both if you'd
Okay.
like, but I'm hearing a lot of organic farmers kind of taking that initiative first. But I mean, just planting sunflowers or these,
True.
Different flowered plants, just encouraging more growth, and then they connect to your crop.
And make it more of a year-round thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to that.
I think a lot of people aren't really going to be able to tell much of a difference once we get the plates off here coming up Thursday.
Change is hard, but sometimes needed. The trolling tradition of Bogus Basin is about to become better? An upgrade that could be up for debate. Speaking of debate, we want to hear your take on what we've talked about today. Join the 208 conversation by text. 208-321-5614. That's the number to send your comments, your questions, even your criticisms. Just keep them clean, clever, and concise, and we could share yours at the end of the show. Okay, so we may be barely into fall, but for powder hounds, it's never too early to start thinking about snow. And as soon as it starts accumulating up at Bogus Basin, you can bet plans will be laid for jaunts up the mountain. Heading up the mountain is only slightly more habitual than what happens on the way up. Why we're talking about winter traditions on an 80-degree-plus day in September, well, that will become apparent in a moment. But in the meantime, if you're new to the 208 or you've never skied up at Bogus, maybe you need a refresher on the Troll Patrol in tonight's 208 callback. You might think a day up at Bogus Basin begins on the ski lift. Nope. Or maybe when you click into those skis? How about the parking lot? Not even close. Diehards say your day at Bogus begins on Bogus Basin Road, about 4 miles up to be exact, where the asphalt is accentuated by an acoustic cattle grate. But just crossing it is only part of it. What's the story of the cattle grate?
It's just, I think skiers in general are very superstitious.
That superstition stems from not what's on the road, but what supposedly lives under it.
The trolls?
You just want me to talk about the troll?
That's our legend up here at Bogus Basin. You open your doors. You have to open your doors.
As soon as you go over that cattle grate, you got to open the doors.
It's a legend.
Oh gosh.
That's lived,
well,
a long time.
In the 60s.
The trolls are even celebrated with an eclectic collection at the crossing and with a sign behind the Simplot Lodge bar. However, their origin story is rather elusive. Some say it started as snow snakes that you would lift your feet to avoid.
And somehow it's evolved into trolls. How that happened, I have no clue.
These days, avoiding this tradition and the trolls is done so at your own risk.
I've heard it that you let the troll in because he's good luck on the way up.
They move around, they kick snow up, they will actually make snow.
And by giving the trolls a ride up to the resort, you're guaranteeing a good day on the slopes.
So when you ski, then the snow will be good. The trolls make the snow good.
But oh, if you don't.
Oh, I don't know. We've never not done it. You just got to do it.
The weather conditions will change. You know, it'll get icy, more bumps in the road.
Maybe you didn't do it one day, you forgot to, and you had a really bad day. You wrecked hard or you got hurt. I don't know.
There's a lot that's left to the imagination with this mythical mystery, like how it got started.
If you don't do it or you don't know about it, somebody's going to be in front of you and all of a sudden they open their door and you're like, what the heck is that?
As for how it keeps going, well, that's easy to see.
One of our friends always did it and we didn't really know what they were doing, so we asked about it and then we just started doing it.
I heard it from my dad about it.
Kind of like that family time on the hill. It's just another way of opening and closing the generation gap on the way up the hill.
And if you've been skiing here since you were a kid, you know, in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, and you did that when you were younger, it's just something that we get to do as a parent. And, like, you get to instill in your kids and be like, hey, this is fun, you know?
You also have to know what goes up must also come down.
When you cross that cattle guard, you open the door and you let them out so they can have a good night's rest.
And be ready for another day.
It's something we do going up Bogus.
And it's something most of us will continue to do going up Bogus, but it's not going to be the same this season. That cattle guard, or that cattle grate, whatever you want to call it, has been in place on Bogus Basin Road for decades. Put in about the time, if not just before, when it was paved back in the 1960s. Repaired and replaced many times over the years, sure. However, for the first time in more than a half century, the Snow Snakes, or the Troll Patrol residence, is getting a complete renovation. Very soon, your drive up to Bogus Basin is about to look and feel a bit different. Because that cattle grate, that historic hiding place of the fortunate trolls, is going away, thanks to the Ada County Highway District. You've skied up at Bogus.
Yes, sir.
You know about the trolls.
Yes, sir.
You understand what you're doing here then?
Improving the troll's house, 100%.
Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah.
The troll's house, which used to just be a pipe under the cattle grate, will now be a fully enclosed box culvert. Okay, why?
Well, it was really causing a lot of damage to the road every season. It was very expensive to repair, and there's no cattle that are grazing over here anymore.
ACHD says the bouncing of that cattle grate under heavy traffic wasn't great for the asphalt edges, costing the county 5 times as much to maintain this section of road than the rest. Why not just get rid of it entirely?
Because we wanted to keep that the troll aspect for people. So still have the cattle guard, keep the troll signs up, and keep it looking like it did before.
Meaning the tradition of trolling will continue through the addition and vibration of the rumble strips. And that custom of chucking change or guitar picks for good luck?
That's all change that people have thrown down into the cattle grate.
Yeah, that's sticking around too. All right, so yeah, you guys are sticking to it.
As much as we can.
That's awesome. So the rattle will roll on, just in asphalt instead of alloy. So the whole point is to keep the illusion going.
Keep the allure going. Mystique and aura.
You got to keep it going.
Keep those traditions going. Traditions are important to the community. We don't want to take away the tradition. We just want to make it so the road is a little bit safer and a little bit less expensive to maintain for the taxpayer.
So best of both worlds.
I sure hope so. that's our intent.
ACHD tells us they've been working on this upgrade for the past couple of years. It's just taken this long to bring it all together. Okay, so what happens to those metal grates they took out? Maybe you're thinking, hey, I'd like to buy those, kind of like when BSU got rid of their old AstroTurf and then started selling off pieces. Well, we're told those grates are going to the landowner who put them in the first place. That'd be Charles Gibson, who hasn't run cattle in the foothills for years. ACHD says the rumble strips will be officially unveiled. They're going to take out those wooden planks, and they'll be back in full service this Thursday. Just when you thought you couldn't hate mosquitoes more, there are now more mosquitoes in Idaho. And if you live in Caldwell, you've probably noticed a bit of contention among city leadership. Well, there are 3 candidates who want to be the next mayor. And tonight, they'll be in the same room asking for your vote. Here's Aspen Shumpert with today's 411.
Idaho is now enacting a new report and hold law designed to protect seniors and vulnerable adults from financial fraud. The law gives banks, credit unions, and other financial institutions the power to temporarily freeze suspicious transactions when they suspect a customer is being scammed. Financial professionals can now place holds on questionable withdrawals and report suspected fraud without fear of legal liability. The law covers adults over the age of 65 as well as younger adults with physical or mental impairments that prevent them from their own financial interests. Canyon County officials say there's a new type of mosquito in Nampa. They detected a Gypti Aedes mosquitoes. It's the first time this type of mosquito has been found anywhere in Idaho. They're relatively small and have a black and white pattern. They also carry and transmit several diseases. So, health officials are telling you to wear mosquito repellent and limit your time outdoors near water. The Caldwell Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters of Idaho are hosting the first of 2 Election Insights candidate forums tonight. Tonight's forum will feature the 3 mayoral candidates, incumbent Jerem Wagner, Brad Doty, and Eric Phillips. And on Thursday, the forum will host candidates for city council seats 1, 2, and 3. Both will happen from 6 to 8 at the Caldwell City Hall Council Chambers. If you live in Caldwell, you're invited to come and learn about each candidate. A famous internet celebrity drew crowds yesterday while visiting the Treasure Valley. The Twitch streamer iShowSpeed visited Idaho as part of his 50 States tour, where he live streams his time in cities across the U.S. Yesterday, he was followed by a continuously growing crowd and even spent some time on the Blue with Boise State football players. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Aspen Shumpert.
All right, we got several comments of support of Representative Ilana Rubel and her trip to Israel as a delegation from Idaho, and this is kind of the message that we got from a lot of people. Steve says, interesting to see people condemn any politician for trying to learn firsthand information from both sides involved in a world conflict to better understand a possible solution. My way or the highway never solves any problem. There are always two sides of a story. Why not listen to both sides? We'd have somebody suggest maybe she should ditch the Democratic Party and become a Republican. I'm not going to speak for Representative Rubel, but I'm guessing she's not much of a quitter and would like to rather talk to people to hear their side of the story as well. Fact-finding trips are key to overseeing, representing, and reporting back to the public. Thank you for being on the ground and not simply lobbing anger from a laptop, says Tony from Boise. Lots more like that. We'll do it again tomorrow. See you then.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.